All right, so if you're watching this while we're in premiere mode, you can use the YouTube chat box if you have a YouTube account. If you do not have a YouTube account, or if you are watching this and it's not during the premiere, please feel free to send me an email at consulting@rachelchristine.com. Please do note that my mom put an extra vowel in Rachel and took the H out of Christine. So it's RACHAELCRISTINE. And we did get a couple of questions sent in ahead of time. So I'll move through these as part of the webinar. But of course, while we're doing this, please feel free to populate those questions in the chat box for us. And for these questions, I did edit for clarity and also to anonymize a little bit, just so that people who sent questions in can feel safe in having these be shared. So with that in mind, I am a career changer. I completed a master's degree in LIS, Library and Information Science / Archives, so that I can work on what I love. I found a dream job and I moved to another state to work there, only to be let go a year later due to reduction in workforce, COVID-related impacts. Now I'm struggling to find a permanent job in archives with a livable wage, as most jobs are temporary, offer low hourly pay, and the additional hurdle of requiring several years of experience in archives. Sadly, I find that administrative assistant positions that require a high school or associate's degree pays much more than a position as archivist, which requires a master's degree. And you are not wrong in that observation. I would be very interested in hearing your suggestion on how we can utilize other skills, prior experience, and our hard-earned higher education to find jobs at LAM institutions, but remain as close as possible to the field we have chosen, in my case, archives. So there are a lot of things going on in here, none of which is in your control per se for the person who sent this question. Prior to COVID, we knew that archives especially, but archives, libraries, and museums were struggling with extreme devaluation in the field. So we were seeing annual wages essentially go down. The numbers themselves stayed the same, but as you've hopefully picked up in the webinar, if the numbers are staying the same, then in fact you are being paid less because there's not that cost of living increase happening, which is why I was so frustrated to see that the majority of archivists are still paid $60,000 or less for the last 20 years. Anyway, so this is definitely an area where it was a problem before COVID, and COVID has made it worse. Yes, there is some of the benefits of some of the larger economics happening right now with the Great Resignation. There's been more turnover in workforce. Sometimes that can mean more opportunity of jobs opening. But that also means that many of these institutions, especially those who are not as economically resilient, don't have the wages that they should have, especially this year with the 9% inflation, to offer a good wage, let alone a living wage. So there's a lot of things at play here that aren't up to you as the person who asked the question. So I just wanted to acknowledge that this is the state of the profession at the moment. And so sympathizing with you here. And you are also very correct. There are administrative assistant positions, project manager positions, positions that don't require a master's, which does not mean that they're not less skilled or less experienced, what have you, but can be very frustrating because you can see those types of positions and then be in a profession where you've got the master's degree, and yet there are positions for archivists being offered that are a livable wage and that should be an entry-level job, and yet are requiring tons of experience or picking candidates with tons of experience. So that is also not helping the situation for many of those LAM folks trying to find a job. There's not a good answer here. This was obviously a complex situation, many of which is like global economics at play right now. So, the advice I would like to offer is to continue as you're searching for these jobs, pay attention to where your skills can translate into. As you indicated in the second section of your question, there are many jobs at larger archives and museums that may not be collection direct or collection specific, but could be a good entry point into collections. So that could be one strategy. Another strategy could be getting a job that pays as much, if not more, while you continue to apply for other archives jobs or wait to apply for those jobs once they're more appropriately compensated. So that could be another strategy. Is there is no shame in taking a job that is paying you better, for you to live your life. That is the market outwork, as well as that makes complete sense. You need to take care of yourself as a human first and to be paid what you're worth. So there are a couple different strategies you could go there. Otherwise, the strategies I have to offer are more advocacy for the entire field. For example, this has been part of my own frustration for the last decade and is why I have been pushing for paid internship programs and salary transparency. Those things unfortunately take time, but it can sometimes help us feel better knowing that we're at least part of the solution. So I know that's not a great silver bullet answer, so to speak, but just know that you are not alone, and know that there is no shame in taking a job that pays you better, even if it's not an archivist job right away. I would say don't sell yourself short and wait for a position that is actually going to compensate you appropriately. All right, I have the skill set to consult, but I'm finding it difficult to break out and find companies, museums, and other organizations to work with. Any advice? So we should definitely do a consulting webinar again. This is more in line with focusing on consulting, but because this question came in, I do want to do it the honor of answering it. There are many things you could do. I think it depends on what you're interested in and who your target audience is. For example, what sort of services are you offering? What location are you in? Are you willing to travel? That kind of thing. Directories seem to work really well in our field. So working with professional organizations to get listed in the various directories as a consultant. Also introduce yourself, especially to the organizations in your area, contributing to and joining different networks of colleagues is another great way. Many of the national organizations have like a independent consultants forum, where it can be great to connect with others or where opportunities are posted. So there are a few different ways you can tap into either being in the place people go to look for a consultant, or creating your own network of organizations who may not need you right now, but may need you in 2 to 5 years, or they may come across a colleague who needs you. So essentially building your network and in being in places where people will be looking. So that depends on what it is you're doing and where you are. But those are some of the first things to do if you want to be connected with people searching for consultants. The other thing I would recommend that's more of a long-term strategy is just contributing to your field. If you are contributing to your field, whether with service or thought leadership, offering resources, that's another great way to get your name out there and to show off your skill. That, of course, though, does depend on your capacity, because many of those things are service related, and that means you don't get compensated for them. So there's a balance there. But those are my first few types of strategies I would recommend you do. All right, and with that, that was the end of the prepared questions. So we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you so much for coming to this webinar, for all of the very sweet and thoughtful notes, for letting us know how valuable the first webinar has been. That's why we've done this follow-up one probably sooner than I would have if it were just up to me in a vacuum. So hopefully you found this helpful. Please feel free to email and follow up. And I wish you all the best of luck, because quite honestly, the better that we are all paid, like, that's good for everybody. So knowing and having the skills to advocate for our value, it is helpful for you, but also selfishly, it's helpful for everybody else too. So selfishly for me, because it's helpful for me if you know your value and stand up in it. So that's all to say. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's hard. I know it can be disheartening, but it is also so incredibly important if our field is going to be healthy. And certainly if you're going to be healthy, being paid appropriately has so much to do with both our mental and physical health, sometimes quite literally. So please do what you can when you can in terms of standing in your value. And with that, I will let you go.